On Monday, Anthropic, the AI safety company behind Claude, backed by billions from Google and Amazon, filed a federal lawsuit against the Department of Defense. The DoD had quietly labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk. That designation might sound like bureaucratic jargon, but in practice, it can be devastating. It can bar a company from government contracts, trigger restrictions across federal agencies, and essentially put a scarlet letter on a business without any public trial or transparent process. Anthropic's legal complaint didn't mince words, calling the DoD's actions, quote, unprecedented and unlawful. That's a company that normally talks about AI safety and alignment, now talking like it's ready for a legal war. So what exactly is a supply chain risk designation, and why does it matter so much? Under federal law, specifically the National Defense Authorization Act, the DoD has the authority to identify companies it believes pose a risk to national security supply chains. Originally, this was designed to target hardware manufacturers, foreign-linked chip suppliers, or telecom companies with ties to adversarial governments. Think Huawei. Think ZTE. The idea was to keep potentially compromised components out of sensitive government systems. But Anthropic is not a hardware company. It's an American AI lab founded in San Francisco by former OpenAI researchers. Applying this kind of designation to a domestic software and AI company, that's a genuinely new frontier. And legal experts are already raising eyebrows. Anthropic's lawsuit rests on a few key arguments. First, due process. The company claims it was given no meaningful opportunity to challenge or even fully understand the basis of the designation before it was applied. That's a serious constitutional concern. The government can't just blacklist a company without some form of fair process. Second, there's the question of statutory authority. Did Congress actually give the DoD the power to slap this label on an American AI company with no foreign ownership or hardware component? Anthropic says no. Third, and this is the big one, the complaint argues the designation is arbitrary and capricious, a legal standard that basically asks, did the agency follow a rational, evidence-based process? Anthropic is betting the answer is no, and that a court will agree. Now, the DoD hasn't released a detailed public statement explaining its reasoning, which is actually part of the problem. But we can speculate based on context. AI models like Claude are increasingly being integrated into enterprise and government workflows. Questions about data handling, model transparency, and the influence of foreign investors have circulated in Washington policy circles. Anthropic has received investment from Google and Amazon, but also has ties to international venture capital. There may also be broader anxieties inside the Pentagon about AI companies having access to sensitive government data pipelines. The irony here is thick. Anthropic has positioned itself as the safety-conscious AI lab. Its entire brand is built on responsible AI development. Being labeled a national security risk is about as off-brand as it gets. Here's why this case matters way beyond just Anthropic. The US government is in a complicated, evolving relationship with AI companies. On one hand, federal agencies are rushing to adopt AI tools. On the other, there's growing anxiety about AI risks, foreign influence, and accountability. This lawsuit could set a major legal precedent. If Anthropic wins, it creates guardrails on how the DoD, and potentially other agencies, can designate AI companies as risks. It forces transparency and due process into what has been a largely opaque national security process. If the DoD wins, it signals that the government has broad, largely unchecked power to restrict AI companies from federal ecosystems, essentially making supply chain designation a powerful weapon that could be used against any AI firm for almost any reason. Either outcome reshapes the landscape. The lawsuit was just filed, so we're at the very beginning of what could be a lengthy legal battle. Anthropic will likely seek an injunction, a court order to pause the designation's effects while the case plays out. The DoD will need to respond and justify its actions, possibly revealing more about its reasoning for the first time. Legal analysts will be watching how the court interprets the statutory limits of supply chain risk authority in the AI context. And Congress? This could light a fire under legislators who've been trying to write clearer AI governance rules for years. Watch this space. The intersection of AI, national security law, and corporate rights is about to get very, very interesting.